I'm Brandy Langham, fish biologist for the Blue Mountain Ranger District on the Malheur National Forest. This resource story discusses the existing aquatic conditions for the lower and upper Camp Creek and Lick Creek subwatersheds, which make up the Camp Lick project. Much work has been done in this project area in recent years by various teams and partners. This resource story builds off the already completed restoration work and focuses on the remaining existing conditions that need to be addressed to continue and finalize the rehabilitation of the Camp Lick project area. The Camp and Lick subwatersheds drain into the John Day River Basin. The John Day River Basin is considered the most biologically diverse river system and a globally important stronghold of wild salmon. Because the John Day River is the longest free-flowing river in the Columbia Basin and is virtually free of hatchery influences. The Conservation and Recovery Plan for Oregon steelhead populations in the Middle Columbia River steelhead distinct population segment rated the Camp Creek watershed as high priority for habitat protection and restoration in the Middle Fork John Day River subbasin. The John Day Subbasin Revised Draft Plan listed Camp Creek as the highest priority watershed. Both plans identify limiting factors guiding restoration efforts in the Camp Lick project area. In response to those designations, a Camp Creek Watershed Action Plan was created in 2007 to help implement the Middle Columbia River Steelhead Recovery Plan for the subbasin. The Watershed Action Plan was designed to address the limiting factors and lays out restoration actions, providing a roadmap to complete high-priority restoration projects within the watershed. Since 2009, many of these high-priority restoration projects listed in the Watershed Action Plan have been completed. 15 fish barrier culverts have been removed and replaced with aquatic organism passage structures, opening access to 17 miles of historic and critical habitat. Removal of over 280 log weirs that created juvenile barriers, stream widening, and channel confinement, restoring juvenile passage to 6.1 miles of stream. Excavation of pools where adequate pools were lacking. Added 2,000 pieces of large wood to streams, building habitat and structure for fish and other aquatic organisms. This work will remain ongoing as restoration is completed, and repairing planting in Upper Camp Creek. These accomplished restoration projects targeted aquatic habitat directly and are only half of the equation in restoring integrity in the aquatic ecosystem of the Camp Lick subwatersheds, moving toward the desired conditions addressed in the Watershed Restoration Action Plan. So what is the other half of the equation to restore this integrity? We need to restore the process and natural function of degraded floodplains and channel structure, restore degraded water temperatures and altered sediment routing, restore floodplain and upland water storage, and promote new growth and sustained riparian vegetation. Movement of water through ground and surface systems, floodplains, wetlands, and watersheds is the greatest indicator of the interaction of natural processes in the environment. With these functions restored, in addition to the projects that are already completed, these subwatersheds will become self-sustaining and properly functioning systems able to handle future natural disturbances such as fire, flood, and drought, providing aquatic integrity and the ability to maintain hydrological, biological, and physical function and composition in the state of environmental variability with the vigor and resiliency of a healthy watershed. Mid-Columbia steelhead and Chinook salmon populations and productivity will be enhanced, moving toward the goal of sustaining populations in the Middle Fork John Day River Basin. Water will remain on the landscape, creating cooler temperatures during the hot, dry summer. A strong, healthy biodiversity of aquatic organisms and other native fish species will persist, along with a healthy riparian ecosystem that benefits not only aquatic species, but wildlife as well. Within the Camp Lick project, there are 74.2 miles of perennial streams and 76.9 miles of intermittent streams. Redband, dace, shiner, sculpin, and mountain sucker occur in the project area. Threatened mid-Columbia River summer steelhead and spring Chinook salmon take up residence in Camp Creek and its tributaries during various life stages. Summer steelhead adults use Camp Creek and its tributaries as crucial spawning grounds from April through June. The fry emerge by mid-July, and the juveniles reside in Camp Creek and tributaries for 1 to 3 years. They migrate to the ocean and return as adults to spawn. Spring Chinook adults spawn in the lower reaches of Camp and Lick Creeks. Juveniles use the habitat for 1 to 2 years, then make their way to the Pacific Ocean. Chinook juveniles hatched in the Middle Fork John Day River use Camp Creek as thermal refuge during the hot summer months when the Middle Fork John Day River temperatures rise. On the map, the color blue marks Chinook salmon distribution, and the color red is steelhead redband critical habitat. This graph shows the 5-year averages for mid-Columbia steelhead red numbers in Camp Creek from 1966 to 2014. The total miles surveyed for reds each year was not the same, and some years no surveys were completed. To account for this mileage inconsistency, the average number of reds per mile were calculated for that year, then totaled in 5-year increments. Although we can see fluctuation in red numbers in 5-year increments, from this data, we see that the overall base spawning trend is lower than historical levels. Steelhead and salmon require a strong flow of good quality water passing over silt-free gravels. Hatching success of eggs is dependent on oxygen levels within the reds. Oxygen is maintained by the quality and volume of water flowing through the reds and volume of the suspended sediment in the water. Actual spawning success can vary from year to year, influenced by heavy rainfalls, sediment inputs, and sediment transports from upstream areas. Newly emerged fry seek refuge in low-velocity, slack water, side channels, or channel margin areas adjacent to slow-moving riffle water. High rates of post-emergence mortality is a direct reflection of suitable habitat that includes visual isolation, good water quality, slow waters, temperature control such as vegetation, cover, and an abundant food base of macroinvertebrates. As the salmoniid grows, larger pools and swifter waters are used, but the suitable habitat characteristics needed for survival such as visual isolation, water quality, temperature control, cover, and food base remain the same. This map shows the red location data from 2008 to 2014, marked by the red dots. If we could zoom to these areas of high red density and look at the juvenile rearing habitat, we then can see the limiting factors and what the habitat is deficient in for successful fry and juvenile rearing and survival. At first glance, we can see a widened channel with little cover, protection, and marginal slackwater habitat. Many of these areas, while may have successful spawning, lack the needed habitat to support rearing of fry and juveniles once they emerge from the gravels. Where would a fry or juvenile fish go from here to seek its needs to survive? Large woody debris benefits aquatic ecosystems by reducing the force of storm events, creating cover, shade, and habitat complexity. Large woody debris promotes gravels to sort into spawning areas, creating pools, scouring greater pool depth, and allowing the stream to retain more organic matter, thus increasing macroinvertebrates, improving quality of the aquatic habitat and health of the entire ecosystem. In this photo, you can see where a fry or juvenile steelhead would prefer to be, finding pocket protection and from predation, the intense sun, cover from other fish, faster moving flows, and an ample food base. The headwaters of Camp Creek and upland meadows of Coxie, Whiskey, and Cottonwood creeks in the project area have all suffered impairment from the removal of beaver and the historical land management practices such as grazing and repairing timber harvesting. These meadow areas are disappearing because of channelization and lowering water tables, adding to the problem of reduced water storage ability. Water is moved off the land faster, taking fine sediment downstream, causing substrate embeddedness and composition, thus reducing spawning potential in lower reaches. Keystone species such as beaver are gone, and during the hottest, driest summer months, the water that is available is disconnected and not naturally available to downstream reaches. You can see from this photo how the headwaters of Camp Creek has become incised, disconnected from its floodplain, and riparian sedges are limited. Lodgepole and conifers are encroaching up to the banks of the channel, increasing water to the trees while decreasing flow in the stream. Cooler water is not being stored for later in the year when temperatures increase. This is Bear Wallow Springs, headwaters for Cottonwood Creek. In the upper left photo, you can see the channel that is downcut and is no longer connected to its meadow. With this disconnection, the effects on the meadow grow every year. The meadow dries faster in the summer, unable to hold its cool water that is being filtered to the lower elevation channel. Soils are changing, creating a more hospitable place for weeds and encroaching trees. Sedges and rushes are declining, creating more unstable soils that are eroding faster and contributing fine sediment to the channel. The dip tank in the center of the meadow is 1.3 feet higher than the surrounding meadow area, and culverts remain from historical roads and spurs where the water has downcut the channel to flow beneath the culverts. Headcuts are moving up through the meadow, creating further incision of the channel and drying of the meadow, increasing high sediment transportation to fish-populated reaches downstream during peak flows. During the transition months from cooler to warmer days and nights, the water temperature increases with lack of cold water storage ability from this disconnection, and in many cases stream flow is not directed to its main channel because of this disruption. Although pictures of Whiskey and Coxsey Creek meadows are not shown here, they find themselves in similar predicaments. Common denominators amongst all the upland meadows are lack of water storage, headcuts, channel incisions, accelerated movement of water off the land pulsing out at the least favorable time, further causing erosion and downstream sedimentation that clogs gravels, smothers eggs, and limits feeding opportunities, resulting in a large impact on downstream fry and juvenile steelhead, Chinook, and other resident fish. The Sumter Valley Railroad grade follows 7+ miles of the Camp Creek corridor. Sections of this historic legacy feature, along with valley bottom roads, have negatively impacted the aquatic ecosystem and natural channel function of Camp Creek. In stream reaches 3, 4, and 5 of Camp Creek and reach 2 of Cottonwood Creek, the historical railroad grade is positioned within the floodplain of the channel and is limiting the natural movement and meandering of the stream, creating a stream that is straightened and confined with fewer quality spawning and rearing areas. These reaches of stream channel exhibit features of a disrupted flow regime and disrupted connectivity with degraded riparian vegetation, and provide less aquatic refugia habitats such as side channels, ponds, and backwater alcoves that are crucial for endangered salmonids and other biota. These floodplain habitats become important nursery areas for fry and juvenile life stages, providing better refuge from predators, higher food abundance, and a more diverse range of habitat than mainstem channels, resulting in higher fish densities and more suitable temperatures during both summer and winter months than the main channel. This is a place where fish of all life stages migrate to during floods, accessing shelter and food, resulting in growth and stronger fish populations. These photos were taken in the same location along the railroad berm in Reach 4 of Camp Creek. The top photo is showing the eastern side of the berm, and the bottom photo is showing the western side of the berm, demonstrating the blocked floodplain and locked stream channel. Floodplains can only function as intended if they are connected to the channel that they serve. Again, this is Reach 4. You can see the constriction of the channel during higher flows and no connection with its floodplain. These conditions create faster lateral incision and channelization, cause more disruption to the groundwater table and surface flow patterns, and result in poor fish habitat. With intense energy flows, there are less and less spawning gravels available. These photos are from Reach 5 in Camp Creek. No railroad grade here, but in reaches 7 and 8, Camp Creek should wind its way through the valley meadow, creating ample spawning habitat with quality gravels and slow-moving, slackwater rearing habitat. Instead, it has become incised and disconnected with its floodplain as a result of past management activities, accelerating lateral incision and channelization during peak flows and creating more disruption to the groundwater table and surface flow patterns. A channel that meanders increases length in the channel and channel roughness. This length effectively dissipates the force of the stream's energy over a longer distance than in a straight channel. The desired condition is a meandering channel that interacts with its floodplain, which aids in slowing the force of the water, dissipating stream energy on the outside banks, creating deep pools and letting the gravels drop out of the water, making good spawning areas. Riparian vegetation also contributes to slowing the velocity of the water. Thou Wag, shown above by the arrows, is a line of the lowest points or deepest channel along the length of the stream bed. Pools, riffles, glides, backwater, and side channels are all found in meandering channels. This diversity of habitats is essential for meeting the needs of steelhead at various life stages. Headcuts through valley bottom meadows like those seen here in reaches 7 and 8 are growing as floodplain disconnection is increasing. These reaches are below their full migrating, spawning, rearing, and foraging potential with a lack of spawning gravel, lack of slackwater habitat, and marginal riparian vegetation. Like in the headwaters, lodgepole encroachment contributes to these conditions and supports the cycle of water deficiency for the stream and its inhabitants, lowering base flows and lowering the water table. Base flow conditions need to be stabilized to revitalize food webs. In reach 4 of Camp Creek, above the confluence with Cottonwood Creek, beaver have taken up residence since 2014. They are using the large woody debris that was put into the system in 2011 for dam construction, cover, and protection. Historical natural flow regulation was altered by beaver eradication, reducing large wood inputs that create the backwater habitats that salmonids and many other fish species rely on. As previously discussed and demonstrated in these photos, you can also see the railroad grade that is constricting further floodplain access during higher flow events. Much of Camp Creek is still deficient in riparian shrubs and sedges in reaches 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 8. Portions of these reaches show this characteristic by over-widened stream channels. Although riparian vegetation has come a long way since the 1930s and the 1960s, more vegetated banks and floodplains are ideal. Root systems of most trees, shrubs, sedges, and grasses bind the stream bank soils and provide stream bank stability during peak flows. They also provide important escape cover for fish and often provide undercut banks. This leads to narrower, deeper stream channels with complex and diverse banks, which create perfect conditions for fish. In addition to providing shade and temperature moderation through all seasons and decreased evapotranspiration, riparian vegetation also contributes stream nutrients that sustain macroinvertebrates. During summer 2014, the Carrick's Working Group surveyed for riparian vegetation along Camp Creek. Results conclude that overall there is a concerning lack of deciduous, shrubs, and young trees like Cottonwood along Camp Creek. There are not many younger trees to replace the old. Alder is an important stronghold for the system and is now being lost to disease, making it more imperative that other riparian trees and shrubs are protected. Cottonwood Creek and Cougar Creek confluences with Camp Creek were modified during the early 1900s and rerouted to make way for railroad establishment. Both streams' natural channels were relocated. The current result is unnatural and straightened confluences that create a shotgun of water pushing out streambed substrate into Camp Creek during peak flows. These reaches of stream lack shelter and pools from peak flows and have less habitat available to fish for rearing, spawning, and foraging than they otherwise would. Here is Cottonwood Creek confluence, straightened and steep with little gravel. Only heavy large rock is present in the channel. The channel is downgraded and channelized with little stable riparian, vegetation, and no pool or slackwater habitat. During peak flows, this creates a difficult, exhausting passage for fish to access available upstream and historical habitat. This becomes a complete barrier during base flow conditions. Red numbers have all but diminished in recent years, yet the creek is still considered critical spawning and rearing habitat for mid-Columbia River steelhead because of their historic presence and potential if these features were minimized. Fish passage is critical to these streams during the hottest times of the year when access to cooler water temperatures is necessary, and both of these confluences have the potential to be optimal fry and juvenile rearing habitat. The Camp Lick area has a high density of valley bottom roads that increase the amount of sediment feeding into the stream, restrict or impact aquatic organism passage, and contribute to floodplain disconnection. In addition, although 17 barrier culverts were replaced, there are more culverts in the project area to replace and more habitat to access. The top photo was taken in the headwaters of Camp Creek on a closed road. The bottom photo is on a closed road on Schoberg Creek, tributary to Camp Creek. Camp Creek and some tributaries are listed 303D with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality for exceeding stream temperatures optimal for fish rearing. All of the existing conditions discussed in this presentation are contributing factors in restoration efforts to improve the quality and sustainability of the subwatersheds, and healthy fish populations will be tailored to address these conditions. Paired with the already completed restoration projects in this area and the intended desired conditions of these two subwatersheds, upcoming projects designed to treat these remaining conditions will put mid-Columbia River steelhead and spring Chinook salmon steps closer to successful recovery. Restoration will create watersheds more resilient to future disturbance events, in the long run benefiting fish, wildlife, cattle, and humans.